Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the fascinating, often perplexing, and always captivating stories that shape our world and its most remarkable figures. Today, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey, one that takes us from the hallowed halls of Buckingham Palace and the grandeur of a royal wedding all the way to one of the most secretive and isolated nations on Earth, North Korea. We're uncovering an astonishing tale from the past. A strange and almost unbelievable episode involving commemorative stamps, illicit profits, and a diplomatic oddity that continues to echo even today. Before we dive in, please take a moment to show your support by liking this video. It truly helps our channel reach more history lovers like you. And if you haven't already, do subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of our deep dives into the hidden corners of history. Now, let's travel back to the summer of 1981. The world was spellbound, watching a spectacle of grandeur and romance that felt like a modern fairy tale. On July 29th, a radiant Lady Diana Spencer walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral to marry His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the heir to the British throne. It was a day of joy, a global celebration of love and new beginnings that transcended borders and cultures, forever etched in the world's collective memory. The images of the smiling young couple, Diana's breathtaking gown, the sea of cheering crowds, and that unforgettable kiss on the Buckingham Palace balcony became instant symbols of hope and renewal for the British monarchy. But, while the world basked in this wave of happiness and admiration, an entirely different, and frankly bizarre story was quietly unfolding thousands of miles away, orchestrated by one of the world's most reclusive regimes, North Korea. In a move that can only be described as a mix of propaganda and audacious profiteering, the North Korean government decided to issue a series of commemorative stamps in 1981. And the subject of these stamps, none other than the royal wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer. This act was carried out entirely without the couple's knowledge, permission, or consent. The stamps appeared on the international market just 2 months after the globally televised wedding, but they were not designed for use within North Korea. Oh, no, their purpose was far more strategic, and much more sinister. These stamps were carefully crafted to attract international collectors, especially those within the lucrative philatelic community. The ultimate goal, as later revealed in British Foreign Office documents, was to generate hard currency, an illicit yet effective way to funnel much-needed funds into North Korea's struggling economy. For decades, North Korea has wrestled with severe economic hardship, compounded by sanctions and an inefficient, centrally planned system. In its relentless search for foreign exchange, the regime turned to covert operations and underground dealings, ranging from weapons, trafficking to large-scale counterfeiting of international currencies. The sale of these unauthorized royal wedding stamps was far from an isolated case of quirky, state-sponsored art. In truth, it was a calculated, albeit peculiar component of North Korea's long-standing strategy to generate profit through covert and questionable means. This peculiar philatelic episode revealed a regime willing to exploit any avenue, however unconventional, to replenish its depleted treasury. When news of these audacious stamps reached British diplomatic circles, the reaction was a mixture of disbelief, mild outrage, and in true British fashion, a touch of dry humor. One particularly memorable response came from a British diplomat based in Beijing, who remarked in a dispatch to London that the stamps were rather excessive, even for them. Coming from someone well acquainted with North Korea's eccentricities, that single comment spoke volumes about just how extraordinary this operation truly was. Amused by the absurdity of the situation, the diplomat wryly suggested that the United Kingdom's General Post Office might consider retaliating with its own satirical stamp series, one he dubbed Geriatric Dictators of the World, featuring none other than Kim Il-sung himself. You can almost imagine the quiet laughter echoing through the corridors of the Foreign Office at such a suggestion, a quintessentially British response to one of the strangest diplomatic curveballs of the decade. The stamps themselves told a fascinating, if completely unapproved, visual story of the royal wedding. There were 4 distinct designs, each depicting a different scene from that unforgettable day. One featured the solemn majesty of the wedding ceremony inside St. Paul's Cathedral. Another captured moments of royal grandeur within the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace. And naturally, the collection would not have been complete without that now. Iconic scene: the newlyweds sharing their first kiss on the Buckingham Palace balcony, before a jubilant sea of cheering well-wishers. Intriguingly, at least one of these images was directly sourced from the official wedding photography of Lord Lichfield, the acclaimed photographer with exclusive access to the event. His copyrighted work, a cherished piece of British cultural history, had been reproduced and distributed without permission, further underlining the sheer boldness of North Korea's actions. This was not a mere artistic homage, it was a direct act of appropriation, transforming a symbol of royal celebration into an unlicensed international commodity. Despite their dubious origins, these North Korean, issued royal wedding stamps soon became a curiosity among collectors. The renowned British stamp dealer, Stanley Gibbons, even sold them as part of a larger commemorative royal wedding set. The asking price: £600, a substantial figure at the time, equivalent to several thousand in today's currency. Such pricing reflected both the rarity and the intrigue surrounding these peculiar collectibles. Naturally, their existence, and the brisk trade in them, drew the attention of British officials, particularly those concerned with protecting the sanctity of royal imagery and preserving Britain's philatelic heritage. Historical records reveal that British officials eventually sought to acquire these unusual North Korean-issued stamps, not to lodge a diplomatic protest, but to include them in the prestigious Royal Philatelic Collection. It was a gesture acknowledging their unique, if undeniably illicit, place in modern history. Yet what makes this story even more fascinating is the paradox that followed, a twist highlighting the strange coexistence of conflict and courtesy in international diplomacy. Despite North Korea's unauthorized use of royal imagery and its clear breach of propriety, Buckingham Palace and Pyongyang have, astonishingly, maintained a quiet line of communication for decades. It seems almost unbelievable, but diplomacy often moves in ways that defy logic. For many years, the North Korean government sent formal birthday greetings to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, a symbolic gesture of state-level respect. In turn, the Queen, ever composed and diplomatic, would reciprocate by sending congratulatory messages to mark North Korea's National Foundation Day. This polite exchange, understated yet consistent, endured through shifting political landscapes and global tensions. It was an invisible thread of civility linking two nations worlds apart, one representing centuries of monarchy and the other an isolated authoritarian regime. Remarkably, this tradition continued into the 21st century. In 2021, Queen Elizabeth once again sent her message of congratulations, as she had done many times before. And following her passing, King Charles III chose to uphold the practice. In 2023, he too extended good wishes for North Korea's National Foundation Day, maintaining the tone of diplomatic continuity. It's an extraordinary juxtaposition. On one side, we have a regime that once exploited the royal family's image for profit, issuing unapproved commemorative stamps to fund its coffers. On the other, we witness the meticulous observance of formal courtesy, polite greetings exchanged between monarch and dictator. This paradox perfectly encapsulates the curious dance of diplomacy, that fine balance where nations may clash on principle, yet still exchange pleasantries through official channels. It illustrates that even the most estranged states often preserve a thin, symbolic thread of dialogue, a reminder that communication, however fragile, remains one of the world's oldest survival mechanisms. The story of the North Korean royal wedding stamps is thus more than a quirky piece of philatelic trivia. It is a window into the audacity of a regime seeking relevance, the global magnetism of royal symbolism, and the enduring, sometimes absurd, persistence of diplomatic formality. It reminds us that history is rarely neat or linear. It is a tapestry woven with contradictions, curiosities, and connections that often defy expectation. So, what are your thoughts on this remarkable tale? Had you ever heard of these unauthorized royal wedding stamps? And what do you think this curious mix of illicit enterprise and formal diplomacy reveals about the strange logic of international relations? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into royal and political history, please remember to like the video, subscribe for more fascinating stories, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next exploration.